In this video, we're going to talk about the different solid shapes, and what you have in your notebook would be, these are called nets. And so basically these are the solid shapes. If we were to cut them apart and lay them flat, this is what they would look like. So we're going to use the rectangular prism, the cube, the triangular prism, and the cylinder in this video. So what the first thing I need you to do is to cut each of these out, and then we'll talk about each of them separately. Okay, now that we've got all of our figures cut out, we're going to talk a little bit about each of them. And the first one that we are going to talk about is the rectangular prism. So we have all sorts of different kinds of prisms. This is a rectangular prism because it has rectangles, obviously. So there's lots of different parts when it comes to solid figures. The first thing I would like you to do is just go ahead and fold on all of the lines. That way we can kind of fold this up and you can see what this solid shape would look like three-dimensionally. So we would fold all of this up. I'm gonna go ahead, fold this right here, and then our last piece right here. And if I put this together, you can see if I were to tape all of these edges together, it would become a box. That's what we would typically call this. In geometry, though, this is a rectangular prism. So there's a couple of different parts, and there's a couple of different formulas we can talk about. So the first thing I want to talk about is the base. So with a rectangular prism, we actually have three sets of bases. So the base is the polygon that is congruent and parallel. So we actually have three sets of bases here. This is one set of bases, and I'm going to label these base 1, and this is also base 1. And then we have these bases here. I'm going to label this base 2, and this one also base 2. And the reason why these would be bases is because they will be parallel from each other. And then our last set of bases would be this right here, base 3 and base 3. So to find the surface area, there's two different types of surface area. There's lateral surface area. So let's say base 1, these are my bases. The lateral surface area would be the area of these four faces of the solid shape. Lateral surface area is the surface area not including the bases. So we would not include these. We would find the area of all of these. And how we would do that is we would find the perimeter of this base and then multiply it by this height. Okay? And the total surface area would be the surface area of all of these put together. So base is actually going to be big B is area of the base, and big P is perimeter. So if we are using our formulas and you see big P, you would find the perimeter of this base, and then you would multiply it by the height of the entire thing, or whatever it calls for. Big B would be the area of the base. So what I would like you to do now is to go ahead and only glue base 3 into your notes. The next one that we're going to talk about is a cube. A cube is very similar to a rectangular prism, but all of the sides are congruent. So they're all equal. They're all squares. So all sides, all faces are congruent. So when we fold this up, so there's not really a base because they're all the same. They would all be exactly the same. So there's not a lot of information to write on this one. We're just gonna fold this up. So a real life example of a cube, that could be a dice. You know, I'm sure there's a sugar cube. I'm sure there's other examples you can come up with. But this is what a cube would look up like when it's all folded up. They're all the same. So let's write that on here. All squares. And they're all congruent. Okay. So again, let's just go ahead and glue this in your notebook. I just want you to glue this bottom square right here into your notebook. Now, our next figure we're going to talk about, this is a triangular prism. There are all sorts of prisms that you can have. You can have a hexagonal prism, a pentagonal prism. It all depends on what your polygon is right here. So since we have triangles here, this is a triangular prism. And so let's go ahead and fold all of our little flaps here. So you can see we have 2 triangles. And then we have 3 rectangles. And think about that for a minute. Why do you think we would have 3 rectangles? We have 3 rectangles because there's 3 sides of a triangle. So let's say we have a hexagonal prism. We would have 2 hexagons, and then we would have 6 rectangles because there are 6 sides to a hexagon. Now in our rectangular prism, it didn't really matter which set of bases we picked, but in the triangular prism, it's very important. This right here is our base. And this is the other base. So sometimes it can be misleading because in a question, you'll see it sitting, you know, on its side like this. We have to picture it sitting up on its end like this. And then these 2 are our bases right here. In order to find our perimeter of the base, we would find the perimeter of the triangle. So big P would be perimeter of the triangle, and big B would be the area of the triangle. Our height is going to be this right here. This is the height of our prism. Because if you think about that, when we would fold it all up and we stand it up on its end, this would be our height right here. This is how tall it is standing up. Okay, so now go ahead and you can glue this rectangle into your notebook. And let's talk about the cylinder. So cylinder, it's kind of different. It's kind of the same. We know it's different because you see we're not using just polygons. We have 1 polygon, which is our rectangle. And then we also have circles, and circles are different. Circles are weird. But it's kind of the same because we have 2 circles. So these would be our bases. So our circle is our base. And then this would be, the rectangle would be our lateral surface area. So the rectangle, whoops, is our lateral surface area. And let's think about big P. Big P is perimeter of our base. How would we find the perimeter of our base? Well, perimeter of a circle is the same as circumference, right? So our perimeter of our base would be the circumference. And we know the formula for circumference is 2 pi r. Our area of our base, which is big B, would be the area of my circle. And how do you find the area of a circle? Pi r squared. So when we fold this up, or we, make this into a cylinder, our height is a little bit harder to do. Our height would be this length right here. So when I unfold that, this right here is going to be the height of my cylinder. And just think of a Coke can or something like that. When you have a Coke can sitting on your desk, the height of the Coke can is going to be that rectangular part. So go ahead, I want you to glue this in your notebook by one of the bases, and that way you can fold it up and kind of see how the different parts work together. And then we're done with this part.